Tyrrell, welcome to the final slot, and as our headliner, we're super excited to have you.
Thanks a lot for putting me on behind beer. Really, really tough spot.
I mean, financial services is exciting as well, so we're excited to have you.
For sure.
Um,
Thank you very much.
so firstly, I believe you're in Chicago, is that right?
I am in Chicago, so based in Toronto typically, but we came here for St. Patrick's Day and never left. So many weeks on, I always tell people, I'm like, there are a lot of reasons that might happen, but this was not what we expected. So, but
Yeah.
it's been great. All of our families here, so it's the place to be.
Great, and everyone is doing okay, family-wise?
Everyone's great.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Thank you for asking. You as well?
Everything is great. We're just
Good.
wrapping up this 4-day conference, and excited to have this conversation with you.
Awesome.
So firstly, I mean, what excites me about when we got you on to kind of have this conversation is some of the work that TD is doing in the community, but also the mission of TD, right? So enriching the lives of customers, communities, colleagues. I find it like I'm really curious on how you're executing on that purpose, or how you're bringing that purpose to life in a time like this.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think these days you can't really pick up any publication or, listen to any leader who's not talking to some extent about purpose. And the question is, can you deliver on it today authentically? So that means, from my perspective, that you need to have been a purpose-driven brand, and you need to be acting in a way a purpose-driven brand does. And there are a lot of great ones out there. I would say at TD, purpose is really at the core of what we've done. You articulated beautifully our purpose, which is to enrich the lives of our customers, colleagues, and communities. Very deliberate, to put those three stakeholders there. And I have to say that during this crisis, we have had to bring that purpose to life for all three of those stakeholder groups. We know it's important. So, even in a normal time, customers want to do business with companies who share their values. Colleagues want to work at a place who, is not just doing well, but also is doing good and really making an impact on society, et cetera. And it's just never been, more important than now. And, I think the prior panelists were talking about just, the devastation in certain vulnerable populations and things like that. So, for us, because it's so core to who we are, we're very fortunate in that, when the crisis hit, we knew where to turn, right? We knew what we needed to deliver, and that was to help our customers, help our colleagues, and to help our communities get through this crisis. And so, and then, the other thing that I would say is that our brand promise in Canada is all around confidence. And it's never felt more relevant, although it's never felt more maybe disrupted. So a couple of years ago, we developed this new positioning around confidence, and we learned through that, there was a statistic, this was in 2017, that 79% of Canadians don't feel confident about their financial future. And so you fast forward to today, and you can only imagine what that looks like today. So we look at the population, and we know that they're financially healthy, and they're financially coping, and they're financially vulnerable. A big number of customers actually took a step to the right, and moving kind of down. And so, for us, it's really about making sure that we are there for each individual customer to meet their personal needs. And so just to give it an example, a few weeks ago, we launched something, our tagline is Ready for You. And so we launched something called Ready Advice. And that really is about understanding every customer's unique situation, and they are. Segments have never been more important. So whether that is, helping somebody get immediate payment relief, which we know is super important right now. We've actually helped in Canada provide that relief to 300,000 Canadians thus far. So it tells you how, big the challenge is, frankly, for some people. To providing tips and guidance for other people. Should I be buying a house? Should I be selling my house? Should I be saving more money? And then for some people, it's about, I'm doing pretty well, and the market is quite interesting. So can you help me with big advice to think about how I invest for tomorrow? So for us, it's really about being alongside those customers on their journey. It is indeed a journey. I do think that the definition of confidence looks quite different today than it did just 8 weeks ago.
Totally. I mean, that statistic is pretty mind-blowing in terms of Canadians and their confidence in their financial stability and their future. So
totally.
I can only imagine that it's a hard time to also give confidence, because it's a little bit of an uncomfortable time, but to see the work that you guys are doing, to bring the community up, whether that be the Community Resilience Initiative that was recently launched. I think for anyone that doesn't know, TD recently allocated $25 million to strengthen communities through philanthropies and support. I'd love to talk a little bit about, why you're doing that and why the team is doing that, and what that hopes to achieve.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just to go to the very first part of your question, I think for customers, it does feel different. And so it is about helping move people one step closer, one step forward. So we're really thinking about what that means. The same is true for our communities. You talked about the Community Resilience Initiative, which I think is brilliant and was stood up in the last couple of weeks to really help provide strategic philanthropy support to those organizations who are really doing good things. That effort actually sits under a banner that we call the TD Ready Commitment. And again, it's quite prescient now to think about what the Ready Commitment focuses on: financial security, vibrant planet, which is, actually a positive of COVID, I think, but better health and connected communities. All of those things are super important. And we know, the aim of the Ready Commitment is to help everybody feel included in a rapidly changing world. And, and we know that the vulnerable populations don't always feel included and probably feel more isolated today than they ever did. So by supporting organizations who can help in those communities is crucially important. We've also done a couple of other things under that banner, which is providing matching grants for TD employees making donations. So it really helps amplify the impact that they're having. And then also we have something that we call the Ready Challenge this year. We set it kind of the year prior, and it's to help with innovations, organizations who are really driving innovations in certain areas. So we will in 2020 be announcing that we'll be seeking to donate or to give grants in total of $10 million to support pandemic recovery. This year, it's about better health. And, so like I said, quite prescient for the times.
And I mean, you talked about the segmentation of some of the customers and consumers that you're looking at, and to think of it in that lens to support so many different groups is amazing. But on your team and within the organization, you have people that work on the branch level, coast to coast, so many employees, so many customers, so many different stakeholders. Has your approach to communication changed at all? Like, obviously a lot of us are working from home in a way. Has it changed? Are you over communicating now a little bit more than before?
Yeah, I think communication is just such a core leadership principle. And so I think some of those leadership principles really, you see people really doubling down on them. And you always hear, that you really can't over communicate. And I think that is 100% true today. What I think is really important, though, is that you're communicating, and we're doing this across the board. You're really communicating transparently. And, I'll give an example. This morning, I had a meeting with my team, and we do 15-minute catch-ups, just on a regular basis. And so one of the things that, we were talking about is, when will we return to work? And our HR had put out a communication a couple of weeks ago that I thought was brilliant. He said, everybody's looking for a moment, and it probably won't be a moment, but it will be a series of moments that unfold over time. And, but I told my team, yep, we're working on it. The enterprise is working on it. We're putting together plans, but I also can't tell you. I don't know the answer to when. And so I think people appreciate that. They appreciate knowing that people are working on it, but they also recognize this is such a unique environment where, there aren't always answers. There aren't always clear answers. So, transparency has been key. The other thing that, we've tried to do as well, I think vulnerability is key. Sometimes that can be a leadership and communication weakness. It can be perceived that way. But what's really helped is actually just, you have to laugh sometimes, right? Dogs barking, all sorts of things that happen when you're on video conference. And, so letting people know that, as leaders, we all are impacted in some way as well. And just being human, it actually has really opened the dialogue, and it's made people feel comfortable and confident to come forward and be like, you're going through that. So am I. So I think that's been super important. Checking in with people individually is probably, just critically important, because everybody's got a different situation that they're navigating.
And it's so interesting. You said some of those qualities, like vulnerability and empathy. Sometimes we when we think of leaders, we don't necessarily always think of those qualities. But I think one thing this thing has taught us all is that those qualities are very important leadership traits, and it brings people together, especially now. Yeah,
totally. And I think, and we're always, I'm sure everybody is doing this, but trying to, you can't always put yourself in somebody's shoes. It's hard for me to imagine, 2 working parents, 3 kids at home, schools closed, summer camps closed, all the things that, people are navigating. And yet they're trying, in some cases they're working like crazy because they're, rush deadlines and things like that. And so, it's just really important to be empathetic now and to make sure, that you're understanding people's, their kind of lived reality. And especially when it's going to be a bit prolonged. I don't know that it's like, June 1st, everybody back to work. We work in a really tall tower in Toronto, so can't imagine jumping in a big elevator with a whole bunch of people right now.
Yeah, I mean, totally. The elevator situation at TD North and South Towers are going to be a little different.
Yes, very. Took a long time anyway. I can't imagine. So.
Totally. Is this teaching you anything about communicating with your employees or engaging with them? So, everyone's kind of working remotely. Is there certain things that work, certain things that don't work? And how are you, trying to bring people together to enjoy that community-oriented feeling that TD offers?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have a very unique culture, which is built on, those connections. One of the 3 pillars of our employee value proposition is a culture of care. And so, I think we're doing so much. Number one is just that really making sure we're communicating. At first, people weren't really on video. We had we had some hiccups. I'm not sure we were fully set up for everybody, all 85,000 employees are roughly going home at the same time. So we worked through a lot of that. I think today we see a lot more people on video, but we're also hearing that that exhausts people, and which is really interesting. I've had a lot of people, interestingly, tell me I'm an extrovert, and so this is especially hard. Some of the introverts are like, it makes me really exhausted by the end of the day, but they're enjoying some parts of it. So I think it's super, super personal. We're trying to put some routines in place because I think one of the biggest risks is burnout. People aren't used to being attached to their iPad and their computer. I'm looking at all of that right in front of me, and their phone, right? We all have all these devices, and so you can be perpetually on. And so, we're doing things like, small things. You don't have a break. So 30-minute meetings are becoming 25 minutes. Google and other companies have done that for a long time. I think that's super important. Letting people know that just because one person, answers emails at night or on the weekend doesn't mean that you have to respond, in the same time frame. We're trying to have no early morning meetings. We're trying to carve out lunch. You have so many parents or people who are caring for elderly parents, and they need to get out. A lot of people are actually doing walking meetings, which I love. I was on 2 meetings today where people are like, sorry, it's really windy out. But I think that's great. I'm in a tall condo, and I realized this morning, like, I didn't get out once yesterday. So it's all those kinds of things that really, really just make it a more tenable situation for everybody.
Yeah, and I feel like there's this blur of personal life and professional life right now, and it's actually very refreshing. So, Luke on the last call actually had his dog barking during the
I
session.
heard, yeah.
We didn't get any
I saw
babies.
Matthew's wife go walking by for sure.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really interesting to see different elements of the employees we work with. And if anything, it humanizes the people you're around on a day-to-day basis.
It does. It does. Absolutely. And you just have to, you have to know, I started my meeting this morning going, I'm not going to be on video because I just went for a run. So,
yeah.
and hopefully everybody's doing those. You have to make choices about, how you show up every day, and you can show up in so many different ways that work.
Yeah, no, it's a great reminder for us all. I'm actually really curious because I know that a lot of my friends that work at TD, they always talk about the digital framework and how, digital is such a priority right now.
Yeah.
With customers going less to branches and, with obviously everyone working from home, has this situation sped up the digital framework that TD has prioritized over the last couple of years?
In a short answer, yes. It has done, just remarkable things. And, what's really interesting about TD is we have strong digital capabilities that, which has been terrific. But at the same time, we have customers. Part of who TD is, really about building relationships and knowing our customers personally. So we have a lot of customers who, have only ever kind of come into the branch, or who, that's their dominant channel. And so, I think this has been a pivot for, so many reasons for so many people. And so what we've really been focused on is actually getting people comfortable and getting them enabled to bank from the security of their own homes. And we have a huge digital platform, so don't get me wrong, but there's a core customer base who just, sometimes they just, and especially in this kind of environment, they just wanted to go out and see the branch manager that they've known for 25 years in Saskatchewan, right? And so, but what we've been doing is, number one, really making sure that people know how to download the mobile app. And, so we've got tutorials. We stood up a landing page that we called a COVID landing page. And we've had several million unique visitors in the last 8 weeks to that landing page. And what we've done is actually we put self-service capabilities. So things like relief programs, where there was a bit of a rush, to actually apply for those programs. We actually we stood up digital forms. And so, things that would have taken us a long time before, we've actually just, because they may not have been the highest priority, but we've made massive, massive strides. We've seen, hundreds of thousands of new customers downloading our app, and we're really helping people understand what all you can do with that app. So, for those who aren't quite as digitally savvy. So, it's really interesting. I think the big question is, what is the sustained behavior? What is channel, usage? We're already seeing, obviously, a shift to digital. But I think the question is sustainability. What do people do? And it was interesting. I was I was talking to one of the consulting firms the other day, and they were talking about this being an on-off kind of scenario. They predict over the next 12 to 18 months. And, the longer that goes, I think, habits really form. And so we already are seeing in some, statistics that 40% of consumers actually plan to go back to their channel of choice and what they used to do, but that means 60% aren't. So I think people are really, they're really figuring out how to do things differently. We all are.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting to see what sustainable consumer habits are going to be down the road. I know for my dad, he's personally learned recently how to, do online banking, and like I don't think he's going to go back now that he realized how easy it is. So
right, totally.
It's interesting to see the habits that might change for some people, but then for others, they'll go back to their preferred method.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, obviously, you're ending off a sponsorship conference. In a way that's been a topic of conversation for a lot of it, but we wanted to make sure we talked about a lot of things that you're doing, but also touched upon, some things around how partnerships are contributing to TD's overall goals. So I know you're a major
Yeah.
partner of the Jays or the Canucks. You know, how important are those partnerships? And it doesn't have to be sports only, but
Mhm.
in building community initiatives that TD is really leaning into.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really struck by the last conversation about, people coming together in big groups and what that means. We have been long-standing sponsors of predominantly sports and music properties. And we do that because it really helps us live our purpose around enriching lives. And we believe that bringing people together and connecting communities actually is a core part of that, as well as, engaging with our customers in ways that go beyond, products and services. So we find, sponsorship is a really key part of our overall marketing mix. And so, yeah, whether it's sports, whether it's music, we've got some of the best. You named, the Jays, the Canucks, the jazz festivals. We sponsor over 80 different festivals around Canada, with Toronto and Montreal Jazz being key, the Junos, and the CCMAs, which I'll talk about in a minute. But all of those organizations were, firstly, we have very great partners. And so we're all trying to figure out what does the new reality, at least for this year, look like, because it's unlikely that we are going to see, a return to big gatherings in the short term. So we're working hand in glove with those partners to find ways that, we can continue to connect with communities. Just a couple of examples, because a lot of these organizations are thinking about what they can do as well to make a difference in the community and really to support those in need in the communities. So great example, we're a partner of the CCMAs, which is the Canadian Country Music Association Awards. And so we do that, in September, that usually happens. And so they came together with ET Canada, Spotify, and others, and put together a 5-day in-concert series where they brought, 20 of Canada's best country music artists. And it was in support of two really important organizations. One was Food Bank Canada. The other was the Unison Benevolent Fund, which interestingly supports musicians and supports the music industry. And you think about just, that industry has been really hard hit, not only the musicians, but all of the people who work around those musicians. And, whether it's a concert or it's a festival or those types of things, they're really important, parts of the community. And so we worked with them not only to be presenting sponsor, but also to make a donation to that and to encourage others to do the same. So they're great. Our partners are all community minded. We look for partners who have like values. And so we really tap into that.
Yeah, and I really love how the lens of thinking switched, right? So like obviously the CCMAs is a big partner, but there's also virtual components that can bring the community together and
Totally.
and just kind of take a different approach to using that partnership in a way to empower change, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tyrrell, what we've been doing with this series is actually kind of bringing it back to the end of the conversation around career advice. So would love to know, if you were a young professional at the start of your career, is there anything you would kind of tell yourself right now? Is there any piece of advice you would give yourself back then when you first started?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think the longer your career goes on, you go, oh, that would have been good to know, really useful to know 20 years ago. So, I would say a couple for me. One is, don't sweat the small things. I think part of kind of working and everything, is you do make mistakes. We all make mistakes, or, small things happen. You send an email to somebody you didn't mean to send it to. All those kinds of things happen all the time. And, I would say I've gotten better, probably over the last 5 to 7 years at this, but I used to really worry about those kinds of things. And I loved that tip, or I love the tip that says, take a penny for every worry that you have during a week or a month, put it in the jar. And at the end of the week or the end of the month, take the penny out and try to remember what you lost sleep over or you were worried about at the time. which I think is so true, because typically things pass, right? And I think if you don't learn from your mistakes, that's a whole different thing. But so many of us really sweat the small things, and probably don't have to. So I think that would certainly be one. I would say probably the other really big thing for me is, and this comes to culture and the kind of organizations that you choose to work for. But, I think especially early in your career, you're really focused on the what. You're building your capabilities, you're building your skills, you're building, who you are going to be, what your brand is going to be as a leader, et cetera. And so we all focus a lot on the what. The more I've, the longer in my career it's also very much about the how. And, how you do what you do, how you make people feel, all those kinds of things. So I think, for me, I've had great luck working for 4 really good organizations where culture, people working collaboratively, all those things that are my values actually we're just part of who those companies are. And TD is very, very much that way. And so, I would always urge people to really think about, what kind of culture do they thrive in? And then, really focus on not only the what they deliver, but how they deliver it. I think that's really, really important. And then just find something you love. I always love that saying, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I think it's so true. I have to say that is my job today. I'm really, really, really blessed to work for a company with purpose, for a company, where I have a lot of fun with sponsorships and great partners and brand and so many phenomenal things.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's great advice for anyone navigating their career now, or, at the later stages of their career. I think this is follow passion points that you have, and, don't sweat the small stuff, because we all make mistakes and we all learn from them.
Absolutely.
Tyrrell, this was a great conversation. I really appreciate you closing the conference off, and we're excited to announce that we've met our $11,000 goal to support Feeding America.
That's amazing.
And Second
Congratulations.
Harvest. Yeah. Thank you
Terrific.
so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.